Welcome to today's stream. Today I have Alex with Athletics with me, and we're going to be just going over a general strategy session, some questions that he has that I may be able to help with. And those of you who are watching the stream, maybe you can chime in and help out as well. As usual, want to take a minute to just go through our disclaimer, make sure there's no confusion. This content is an opinion and is for information purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other materials as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained in this content constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by any of the parties involved. So, Alex, I'd like to welcome you to the stream. I'd just like to kick things off by you taking a minute to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you're at and where you see things going for the company.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm from athletes.gg. And basically, I've always been into esports, even before when they were called esports. I was a big fan of like CS, the Counter Strike 1.6. Spent too many of my formative days playing that game. When I was as young as 8, I actually wanted to make video games. So my dad gave me a CD of like how to make games in BASIC, like the programming language, and then things kind of built up from there. I always had interest in making games, but that's basically how I got my like technical background is by making games. And then when you make games, you had to like put them on a website or something like that. So like you learn web development just through the nature of that. And then I actually went to school for I applied to school for classical voice and business, and then I ended up doing pre-med in chemistry. So I had no clue what I wanted to do. And then my junior year, I decided, hey, I don't really want to be in school for that long, and kind of went back to my tech roots. And then basically fortunately like landed through a bunch of startups, and I've always been in startups in my like professional career essentially. So as far
Okay.
as like athletes GG goes, one of the things as a fan, I'm a huge fan of the FGC. That's like what I go to primarily these days. I love the community. I love like Super Smash Brothers is my favorite game. It's the game that I actually compete in. Not to not I wouldn't even say pro amateur. Just go in and get my O2, and bounce. But it's I really enjoyed watching the scene. That's where I like saw like with Smash 4 how much it grew organically and as a grassroots function. And since there's no real organization or there's no like logistical governing body for Smash. There's like no singular place of data to go to. As a fan, like when's the next event, when like what is my favorite smasher doing, like what, like how do I get into other fighting games like Tekken or Street Fighter, stuff like that. So essentially I wanted to make myself a resource that would pull all this stuff together into one app and like see everything I wanted to know about the scene. um, and then on top of that, I was extremely shocked um, by one tweet that Zero put out. He has the Guinness World Record for the longest winning streak in any esport. And he literally went a year without losing. And this guy's number one, without a doubt. Everyone agrees he's number one. And he was still tweeting like, "Hey, can anyone like build a website for me?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, so they don't know how to market themselves. Um, there's like, because esports is anyone can join it, like even folks as young as 13 are like blowing up in the scene. They don't know what they're worth. I talk to people in the industry. There are folks that have been in the scene for like decades. They don't even know what they're worth. Like, so there was a uh, a guy in Canada who was running a tournament, and he wanted to fly out this top Street Fighter player. And the player was just like, "Oh, can you cover my um, my hotel for me?" And the guy was ready to like put up thousands of dollars just to like get him to come because he's a big name. So I really wanted, so one, as a fan, I wanted to consolidate all the information, like make a one-stop shop for all that. And two, I wanted to use data to kind of help give some kind of standard in terms of entertainment value for esports athletes, and kind of like legitimize them more and give them more confidence when it comes to going to sponsors or understanding their value in the community. So that's where Athletes GG came out of.
Great. So from that vision, how much of that have you been able to execute on so far?
Yeah. So I guess for context, I quit my day job to do this full time last December, with the help of some angel funding from like honestly two of my best friends. They just wanted to take a risky investment, and they really believed in what I wanted to do. But I've actually been working on and off on this thing for about 3 years. It's the deal is completely different now, but as it stands today, we have an app on the Play and Google Play and the Apple App Store, which you can download and follow your favorite athletes. Most of the data is like FGC concentrated right now, but we want to expand to more games. Um, and then on top of that, we one of the new things that we've brought to the community, which I'm super proud of, is are these like player and head-to-head cards. So basically, we're using the data that we're capturing and b- giving like ESPN style kind of cards to the broadcast. So if you like tuned into like the Big House, which is like the last major Smash tournament that happened, which had like a viewership of over like 97,000 people, if you saw like a player card detailing like the recent and most notable wins for a player in like top 64, those were our cards. So basically, like bringing more production value to the table, helping the community that way, and also like gaining trust. That we're trying to just really focus on like the well-being of the athlete and put them on a pedestal. So
Great. So now that you've got some of that out there, you've got an application, you got some data coming in, you're sharing some data, you're using it in different areas. Uh, what are some of your biggest challenges right now?
yeah, so obviously, figuring out the next direction to go, and how to use that data, and like specifically which games do we go into, which would be the most, which where can we fill in the gap the best, and then like I said, like the goal, obviously we have to start making money in order to really like grow, expand the way we want to. So figuring out like how not only like where we take the product next, but also like what revenue model we can actually take to start being able to quit my contracting job so that we can do this like really full time instead of just like during the day and then like having to have a night job essentially.
Right. So what kind of monetization are you considering?
Yeah, so the main thing we are looking to do, and pretty much decided that it's something we want to go into, and now we're just interviewing customers and trying to figure out our roadmap for it. Is we want to create a college recruitment tool using our data. And when I asked a couple of folks that run varsity programs and stuff like that, they said I asked them like, how much would you pay for a service like this? And they said, let me be straight with you. Every person that you recruit to the college, that's like several thousands of dollars in tuition for the college. So it's at least worth like a couple like $100 a month or something like that, to have some kind of service that can help them find like the talent, in this like huge pool of kids. So
Right. So what's your feel for the number of, I guess it's viewers that you'd be targeting for that product?
mhm.
What's that mix look like as far as the appropriate age group versus the total viewership?
Yeah, what by viewership, what do you mean by uh viewers? Do you mean like like colleges or institutions that would like look to
No,
uh
the number of people you would be able to drive to them. So you've got,
oh, I see.
you know,
Yes, yeah.
using people using the app or, you know, whatever level of engagement you need to get them to before you would be able to create that transaction to get them to a college.
Right. So I think one of the feedback that we got is the current competition out there is focusing too much on quantity and not quality. Um, and But as we are now, since we integrate directly with Smash GG, which is a tournament management software, very commonly used in the fighting game community. We're already tracking like over 200,000 athletes. Um, and basically, if you sign up and participate in any Smash GG tournament, we have you in our database as well. And then we want to integrate with more software, tournament management software, and more games directly. So, something like Fortnite, where they have a pretty easy API, like you can literally access like all the players that have ever played Fortnite, which is great. Um, so that's what we're trying to. That's the kind of viewership that we're tackling. What's great is we don't have to tackle the chicken and the egg problem too. Like, we don't really have. It's not too hard for us because we have these APIs that we can hit into while we're trying to build people that actually organically sign up on the app and grow that way. We can also pull in a lot of automated stuff. So
Right. And then from that, you have the ability to comply with COPA, but then also get ages for the individuals and know who would be ready to go to college at some point soon, I'm assuming.
ages might not always necessarily be there in terms of data. So in Smash GG, I don't think they I don't think there's a birth date in like their user um, information. And we're just starting to like look at game specific APIs. So I'm not sure if like Epic like opens that out like in their account information or anything like that. So that is one challenge, like figuring out how we can really focus on like pulling like the high school demographic for these college recruiters. So that's definitely one thing that would be uh, difficult, or we would have to like start reach out to the player and say, hey, like if you're in high school, like sign up, put your birth date in, like and like use us as like a LinkedIn for like your esports resume. So it probably would require a lot of marketing.
Okay. So top challenge is monetization. Obviously, that's an important part of any business. You can have a really great tool, but to get it to become a business or a company, then you need to figure out some sort of revenue source for it. What would some of the challenges be with the product itself, or your go-to-market, or other aspects of what you're building?
Yeah, so I guess starting with the product first, data, um, especially when you're trying to aggregate data across lots of different systems, is not an easy task. They're like the company that I used to work for basically did that for CRMs and phone systems. They were a CTI company. They are a CTI company, so it's literally just like normalizing data across all these disparate platforms and having them talk to each other. So it's not easy, but it's also kind of a way of being what's the word? If we can solve that problem, it will be very difficult for anyone to kind of copy because it'll take time and a lot of engineering effort. But yeah, basically just like data cleaning, making sure that we don't have like duplicates or we're missing information for a player if we can get it. So that's one part. As far as go to market goes, obviously we're new in the scene, gaining that trust in the community, both the mainstream community that goes to like these big tournaments, but also like the these educational institutions that are trying to grow their esports scene, um, and also like getting trust for people to actually join our application and like really be good about like documenting their accomplishments as an esports athlete, kind of like in LinkedIn. So
Okay. Are there any sets of data that you wish you had access to, but you don't think you'll be able to get at?
there are some tournament management systems that don't have a easy or open API right now. Like Bracket is not Bracket. It's a um, man. Forget which one of them is. But also like when it comes to like games like Smash, they the curse and the blessing is they don't have like an API like Street Fighter. There's no like API to pull like stats from, right? But at the same time, because they don't have like a official ranking system outside of like the Capcom Pro Tour and stuff like that, it's not easy for the recruiters to figure out, hey, is this person good? You know, is this person worth talking to? Is this person worth bringing to our team? Is this person good at working in a team? You know, can we like bring them onto our Fortnite team? Um, because Fortnite they just started having a ranking system, but like it's still not anywhere as reliable as like Dota or League of Legends, where you can like look and see if they're diamond or platinum, right? Stuff like that.
So for those recruiters, what outputs would the best solution need to have for them? Let's forget about the tool that you have, you know, that's always a starting point, but
Mm,
if they were to just start from scratch and say, hey, if I could just push a button and have this information in front of me, that would be perfect. What would
right.
what would that look like to them? What problem are you solving?
Yeah. So you know, the major things that they're looking for is some kind of recommendation on players, because like I said, the current competition is like literally just glorified Excel sheets of players, and like you still have to look through and like figure out what players you want. um, the big problem there is the folks that are like, for example, Canada has like 200 varsity esports programs now, which is super cool, and like that's like, as a kid that would have been awesome to hear. But a lot of the people that are running these programs are either uh, esports veterans that have never built an organization before, or folks that have a history and knowledge of building a traditional sports organization but have no clue what's going on in esports. Literally, there are program. There's most of the programs out there. They either hire someone that's good at esports, or they tell their existing like program management, "Hey, you need to build an esports program." um, so like a lot of them are just shooting in the dark in terms of like what they are looking for. So I think, you know, one of the things that we want to give is like context for the players. So while there are, for example, there's this one professor, Canadian professor. He was telling me, yeah, we have we use this platform that's basically like a glorified marketing tool. It blasts out to like eligible folks that we can reach out to and recruit, and they self-report their information on like you know, on their accomplishments. And you know what sucks is they'll say, "Hey, I'm on the PR for this random city in, I don't know, Kansas," and then like he's looking at this like these accomplishments and like, I have no clue what that means. Like, yes, he says he's like top 3 PR'd in, I don't know, Kansas City, but what does that actually mean in terms of competition? Like, how does that compete to someone that's, you know, top 3 in Pennsylvania or like Philadelphia or something like that? Um, so like in order like being able to create that context and say like, okay, basically using, in our minds we would use the AGG score, which is basically our entertainment value right now that's normalized across all these sports athletes, and be able to say like, hey, you know, this is on the normalized scale, this is how two athletes compare. On top of that, what they're looking for is, since a lot of the games they're looking at are team based, um, or have some kind of team element when it comes to like practice, they're also looking for kind of like a recommendation style thing, like in LinkedIn, where you can like recommend a colleague of a particular skill. So they want something where they can say, oh, like I have worked with like, I've been on this team, even though it might be like completely just with friends, but at least their friends would be able to say like, this is how he worked as like team member, and you know, maybe he was like the leader of the team, and he was the one making all the calls and like doing all the strategy and stuff like that. Just more, again, more context around the player. um and then you know, of course, any kind of like stats that we can pull, especially for the traditional sports, folks that are usually that are used to traditional sports, like they're used to looking at like combine numbers and like you know, scouting reports and stuff like that. So basically, similar kind of stats there. Um, and then they also do care about social media presence. Some care more about just looking at their history and making sure they are a good culture fit. They're not doing anything or saying anything, you know, incredibly bad online. They know how to be at least behave themselves online. And to some colleges also, like the potential to for getting a content creator that is also player is also important. So like if you already have an existing Twitch stream or YouTube or Twitter following, like that's also beneficial to the college to bring them more renown to their program, right? So
Okay. And then how do you see this fitting into the high school esports leagues, something like a Playverse or a HESL?
yeah, so that's also one thing we want to do is kind of, to be completely frank, no one cares about the results in those leagues, right? You're not going on Twitch to watch a play versus tournament, or like you're not going to Twitch to watch a high school tournament. But I want to change that. I want to make it so that those results in the high school and collegiate leagues do matter and are more prominent in your accomplishments as a player. So I want to integrate with any and all like high school programs or amateur programs, just to get their tournaments in our, synced up with our database, so that not only do the players like when they create their like resume have it, but also when the events are happening, like they pop up as results on the app for like tournaments that are coming up this weekend, so that it adds a little bit more visibility to what those programs are doing. Because I really believe that sport like esports recruiting will end up following the same pattern as traditional sports, where you start out young, like at like a travel team, and then you go through all these filter programs, then are scouted continually as you grow, and then you eventually get recruited by some kind of like college, and then a pro team. So
All right, well, talk me through that a little bit because in professional sports, there's some physical limitations on that, and so
mhm,
you can't have the freshman in high school playing against the senior in college. They will just literally get crushed, and that doesn't, that's doesn't matter really what sport or what you're doing. It's just there's a physical presence there no matter what. However, in esports, you just had a 14-year-old that won the Fortnite tournament,
right.
and so how would that progression work if you're going to use that same analogy? You've got a freshman in high school that just went out and competed with the best in the world.
hmm Right. So, we're not really targeting the tippity top. Um, you know, they, like those folks, like they already have enough like clout and like accomplishments on their own, that they don't really need us to like show like introduce them to like teams and like collegiate programs. I'm looking more at the folks that are like at that high level, but like just not in the top 50. They're just out of range of like being visible. And going with like your analogy, I do think maturity does play a big role in esports. It's still, so like even just like the differences in age, it's a little, I think it's a little easier for like 1v1 sports, but when it comes to like a team sport, like pretty much everyone, like the older you get, the better your just decision making is, the better you're working with folks. So I think there is still like a kind of like mental separation between the levels. um and I in terms of just like how things are starting to get organized, they are organized by like age. So like you look at like all the high school programs that are coming up, and then all the collegiate programs that are getting started, and then like you look at all the, like the amateur leagues, like Super League Gaming. Like they target more of like the younger crowd, so I it just it even though like there's no physical limitation, there's still, I think there's still like a human nature um part where we still want to group things by age. But even then, like the idea is that you're just tracking like a player's growth over time. So if for us, like if we see like a huge spike in like someone over like 2 years and they're still in like middle school, then hopefully we catch that, and then you know uh maybe there's a team that wants to pick them up, or like maybe there's a college that already wants to start like talking to like their parents, and like sending them some like more like information about their program, so it's on their mind. So ultimately, like uh when I mean filter programs, I just mean like there's the more organization as you go through your level of play will mimic or mirror what is happening in traditional sports to esports.
Gotcha. So, knowing that this will change over time, how are you measuring the success of what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so what the right now we're measuring based on growth of the platform, how many like players are organically joining the platform, and then we are also looking at like we're kind of measuring ourselves based on how many events we can and partnerships we're making in terms of like folks using our data. Um, and then obviously the most important thing that we want to start um, uh, when we have this product out is like how many kids are getting recruited by teams by programs. That will be like the true, you know, measurement of like is this actually like a useful product? Because if no one's getting picked, no one's getting like scouted by our program, then like what's the point? So
Right. Now, will those programs be looking for different things in players, or will it be a very similar top 10, top 20, top 30 list that everyone will be going after?
I think it will be very different. Part of it is because of the different games, the programs I might be focusing on. So naturally, there's going to be separation there. Some programs will care more about like teamwork and accomplishments like in team-based games as opposed to 1v1, or some like for example like Fortnite, maybe they care more about singles players versus duos or the other way around. And then for like social media, like I said, some might only care about doing a quick background check, while others actually want to see like how have you been able to grow a community behind you.
And then do you have a unique way of getting the social information from someone, or is that just you're going to have them fill out their profile?
So that one is what's also nice about that. There, like when it comes to like YouTube and Twitter and Twitch, the APIs are open as well, so we can pull information without them like having to like authorize it because it's all public. But like for stuff like Instagram uh, and Facebook to a certain extent. Like I don't know if we're gonna do too much with Facebook analytics, but they have more closed off APIs that we do need them to sign up for.
And then even if you can get to the public data, there's no primary key though that says this ID is this same person across, right?
Yeah, that is true. But fortunately, like when they do sign up for a bunch of these other platforms, the tournament management systems, they also end up including their Twitch and Twitter. Because chances are, if they are chasing that kind of dream to be a player, they're connecting all their social media everywhere, making it as visible as possible, so people will follow them.
So right now, do you have a feel for what the line would be between a player that a college would be looking to recruit versus just somebody that plays for entertainment, and how the schools are defining that when they look at somebody?
Yeah, so when it comes to like games like League of Legends, Dota, they look at like your skill level there, right? Um they for what is attractive with what how we're doing it is we can kind of see like we also rate the quality of the tournaments you're going to. So like if you're going to something like the big house, that is like way more important than if you win like 5 weeklies in a row, right? In your local like comic book shop. So we can definitely see like, is this person traveling a lot? Is this person going to like bigger tournaments? And like seems to put like more of an effort into this kind of career path, or like at least when it comes to like doing this as a way to like have a scholarship or something like that. Um, and I think that is again like that from what I've talked, like the folks I've talked to, they are looking for those like serious players that are showing that kind of desire, because it's like there's like when it comes to these games, you still have to grind, kind of like how you still have to practice for regular sports. Like you still have to want it that badly in order to like be the very best. Um, and that's actually one of the criticisms that another the same professor was talking about. He said they use this. They've been looking at this one company that kind of does like a combine idea. And by combine, I mean like NFL combine, that kind of combine. Um, and so basically, like for Fortnite, they'll have like an open combine for 5 days where like you just jump in and play as many games as you want to kind of show off what you can do. But even then, the professor was like I don't know how seriously they're taking the games because like maybe they're going in and they're just like dicking around one game, and then the other game like they might actually be taking it seriously, and then the other game they just might be relaxing. And like it's a good idea, but like they can't really discern like the true quality and drive of the player from those results. So it's definitely something on the top of their minds.
Gotcha. Let's see. What's the next piece here? Oh, um, so you had mentioned one of the challenges will be figuring out what game to go into next and kind of what where the direction should go. What are you doing to try and answer that question for yourself to define which one to go after and what makes the most sense?
Right. So a lot of it is based on like our knowledge internally to the company. So we have like about I'd say like 12 folks that work kind of our interns or part-time. And we're kind of looking internally like what games do we understand the most? So like we know what people are looking for when it comes to a good player for those games. So naturally for most of us, fighting games are important. And what I'm hoping for is the new League of Legends fighter will drive a lot more interest into the fighting game community, and we'll see that community grow even more over the next couple years, along with like the new Guilty Gear and stuff like that. Um, but we acknowledge that like we also have to look at the level of spectator of viewership and basically level of revenue for the game, right? Um, Something like Smash has like a huge viewership, but because it's so grassroots and Nintendo's not back the competitive scene, like like Fortnite, like Epic does for Fortnite, or like Valve and Riot do. There's no money in it, right? So like these programs aren't don't have enough money to like spend on external tools, at least for now. So obviously like we want to keep that in mind, and it looks like what we want to tackle next is Fortnite because it meets we know like internally we know enough about Fortnite, watched enough of it. I personally enjoy I've only played like maybe 2 hours of Fortnite, but I watch a lot of it because I actually enjoy watching competitive Fortnite, especially duos. And then second of all, it's obviously making the most money out there. I think right. I mean, Epic makes like $1 billion a month or something like that, something ridiculous, or like a quarter. And then third of all, they do have some kind of API which we can hook into, that we can pull certain stats like kill death, or like how many games they've reached top 3 or 1, or like how many they've like reached like top 50 whatever. So they do have like some stats that we can already like hook into. And then on top of that, what's nice is there's no real front runner in Fortnite's analytics right now. Whereas like for Dota and League of Legends, while they do meet all the other criteria, it's already pretty crowded in terms of like there's Dota buff, and like you can like easily look up League of Legends information. But we do want to either work with those, or maybe not reinvent the wheel, and maybe just hook into their systems and use it to power our recruitment platform, which could be an option. So but I think for right now we're really focused on like getting Fortnite as our next game on our kind of like core games list.
Okay. And then for the college programs, how are they deciding what games to center their athletes on and who to build a team around?
It's pretty much the same thing. Like what brings in viewership, what brings in money, um, what it, uh they the professor I was talking to like referred to them as different tiers of games. So he called like Fortnite and League of Legends and like Dota like tier one, and then like Call of Duty, um CS:GO, and like most other shooters like tier two, and then like you have like Smash, which and like Street Fighter, which are like tier three kind of esports. So yeah, they're looking at also as like a revenue um, perspective. But additionally, it naturally the larger the game, the more pool of students that they can bring in as well to the university that are high quality. So and matching the culture.
How are you going to be able to stay nimble in such a dynamic environment? I mean, almost nobody saw Fortnite coming. It blew up. It could have gone away just as quickly. Who knew? And then now it's stuck around and doing well. But even in that time, we've seen um, something like a Destiny that's not competitive, but it kind of came out dead on arrival and then revived itself and done quite well. Um, and others that just came out dead on arrival and stayed that way, and maybe they could have had a competitive marketplace for themselves, but without the following, there was no way. So we know this is all going to adapt. That's another place where the sports analogy kind of falls flat because we're not just talking football here that has been around for hundreds of years, and it's the basically the same game, and if you play it as a kid with flags, then you're learning the basics for 20 years later when you're ready to get out on the field. uh, we have yet to see a game that at least maintains tier one status for that long. There are some that are getting to the point where they've been out that long, but certainly not to the same degree. So how does this adapt in that type of environment?
Yeah. So in the end, our kind of from a product perspective, our data model is like very fluid. Like we don't really we don't care too much what games you're into. So even if you like switch careers and like switch to a different game, even within fighting games, like folks will transition from one type of game to another pretty frequently. So they're like, as if you're looking for just an overall esports athlete, um, uh, we can kind of service that as well. But from a just a like a cultural perspective, one like always talking to customers. That's like the most important thing in any kind of startup. Like always like talking to like folks that are in the scene, folks like keep talking to other folks that are starting businesses in the community, talk to like more institutions and folks like starting these like varsity programs. And then like and one that I think is super easy for us, just always like actually being a fan of the games ourselves. Because if you actually care about like the games you're watching and playing, like you'll naturally just always like stay low to the ground and be one of the, like hear the rumblings of the train before like it gets there, right? So um you know I think those are the main things that'll keep us nimble.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're coming up on kind of the last third of our time here. Was there anything more specific topic that you wanted to cover or a question that you had?
um I guess one thing that I guess just thinking of like the specific struggles I've gone through in the past year. I've done a bunch of startups, but like you mentioned, gaming is fast moving. So like not only are we like like I kind of think of like not only am I on like a train of myself trying to like shoot a target, but the target's also moving, right? So whereas like the startup I came from, it's in CTI, which is like dealing with like phone systems and like Salesforce and Dynamics, like that stuff is ancient like in the tech world. But there's still room, like we're innovating in that space, right? um so I guess, what how have you seen, have you have you do you have like a lot of experience seeing companies that get started in a more volatile space? And like, how have is there like a pattern, or like have you seen like have you seen like founders and companies follow specific behaviors that made them successful? Even though it was rough terrain.
Sure. I think the key there is just making good decisions, and good decisions are made off of good data. So it is very easy for entrepreneurs, myself included, to come up with an idea that you really believe in, and then spend a lot of your time trying to prove that you were right. And it's not too terribly hard to convince yourself that that's correct, right? You can go out and do customer development and ask leading questions, and only hear what you want to hear, and come back feeling like, okay, we've got it all figured out. And so, as you already mentioned, yes, you want to be talking to customers, but you need to make sure you're asking the right questions, that you're really listening, and that you are open to making that shift and that adjustment based off of the new information. Because once you move from being the customer to being the entrepreneur, you're no longer a good source for that customer development, because you've already kind of tainted your thought process. Um, and I think the most important part of that is just being really focused on the problem you're trying to solve, and the understanding that that problem is worth solving, right? There's a lot of little problems out there that are kind of cool, that might be neat, but aren't necessarily big enough to have a value and a worth for someone to pay for it. And whether that's a double or a triple sided market where you're selling data, or you're doing advertising, or whatever that may be, at some point what you're doing has to generate enough value for it to be worth somebody's time or money to pay you for it. And so, when you're talking about a uh, tech industry that is slow to evolve, then there are some, pretty low-hanging fruit when you just apply new technology to it. With something like this, where you're on the forefront of technology and changing software and consumerism, and a finicky consumer group, then yeah, there's a lot of areas where you have to stay nimble and stay ahead. But again, the key is that problem that you're really solving, and then making sure you understand for yourself why this is the best thing for you to be spending your time solving.
Gotcha. So I got a follow-up question on that. So at my old company, the founder, who was our CEO, at the time, like, I thought, I didn't have much empathy for him, because the main fault he had is he expanded our product too much. We were going down different like alleys and like making new features. Like I one of the jokes I made in the company was WTF stood for what's this feature. And ultimately got fired and replaced by the board. But now sitting in like a similar position as him, I have way more empathy, because like when you're because for me, I was like, I was talking to customers all day and building products. So I was like, why don't we just focus on these things? Like, this is so obvious to me. But now that I'm sitting in like the driver's seat, I'm like, okay, there's so many things that we can bring value to. All these, like, whenever I talk to one customer, um like doing the revenue chasing, like they say, oh, like this is super valuable to me, and like we can go build that and gain those customers. And then there were other customers like, oh, we could, like, we want this. And so like, how do you know, is there a way to like figure out like, w- you know where you should really focus when you are like trying to chase revenue and try to get like your first customer? um like, how do you know like you're not like completely going off the rails? And how do you know when to like push like the boundaries of your product a bit more and like adjust to customer feedback, and when to say no even to like potential revenue?
Yeah, I think the most important part of that in general is understanding what you're the best at, and then also understanding what the customers are best at, right? Um, Customers are not the best at product development or features or telling you how to solve their problem. If they knew how to solve their problem, they wouldn't need you. So you're the best at coming up with a way to solve the problem in an efficient, cost-effective, timely way. Uh, Customers are the best at sharing the problems they're having. Period. And that's pretty much where it ends, unless you happen to have a customer who is also a UI UX expert or um, a game platform developer or something like that, which you'll probably be having different conversations with them. The only thing that you're needing to work with a potential customer on is defining what their problem is, and then you need to understand what that value and worth is. Because someone could say that's valuable, which means you're you're providing something, but until they really understand what that's worth and what they're willing to pay for it, then it may still fall in that category of just a nice to have. And you can have a bunch of different nice to haves that never add up to something that's worth someone paying for. And so where does that get you? And that gets back to the problem. Is the problem we're solving, is the problem big enough that it's worth your time to solve? And then when talking to the customers, that's what all of those conversations should be around, is defining that problem, understanding the size of it, understanding the other challenges that they're facing. You want to be able to know that the problem you're working on is the most important one to them right now. Because if they have a prerequisite problem that they have to solve first, then you'll never get to that worth. You can provide value to them, but they have something else that's happening that's so much bigger that there's never enough resources to allocate to the problem that you're solving. So that core is where the answers to those questions come, and a lot of that's based on experimentation, and a lot of that experimenting you can do without building a single bit of code or a product to really proof that out, to see if someone's actions really follow their words. You can be excited about something and tell someone about it, and unfortunately, the same answer for them is the answer they would give if they're really excited about it or if they just want to get rid of you. And if that's the situation you're in, then it's a little hard to gauge the level of need if someone's just telling you what you want to hear so that you'll leave them alone versus someone's really excited about what you're doing. Well, how can we tell someone's really excited? Well, one thing is to get them to act. It doesn't have to be all the way through to the point of where they're sending you a PO or putting money on the table, but some sort of action towards that that shows you that there is enough value there that it's worth their time to do something. And if what you're doing is only worth them talking to you for a few minutes, then that will tell you something about your solution. If it's worth them giving you their email address or putting a credit card down or taking some time to help test something. All of those pieces add up to show you that yes, this is really something that I'm willing to put some time into, and I really need this solution now, as opposed to, yep, that's really cool. Totally wish that existed, although I've never even taken the time to Google it to see if there's another one out there. Well, how big of a
Right,
problem is that really?
right, cool. Um, One other question I've got for you, and this one, since you're a VC, I would love to hear your opinion on this. So we actually applied to Y Combinator previously. We got all the way to like the interview. We actually got oh man, I forgot his name. He was one of the co-founders of Twitch. I forget his name, but now he's like managing partner of YC. And I was like super excited, because I was like, I don't have to explain a whole bunch about this, but we actually like didn't see eye to eye at all. He saw like he was like saying, oh, don't people have notification fatigue? And he's like, he didn't really. I don't think we. You have 10 minutes to explain what you're trying to do, right? They actually gave us 15, but it just we didn't agree with like the plight of like the streamer and the content creator and the athlete at the same level. But the one piece of feedback that we got is it sounds like we're doing too too much. Um, because we mentioned at the time we were building an app, and then we also talked about recruitment at that point, saying like pretty much the similar idea, just not focused on colleges. We were just recruitment tool in general. And maybe it's just I didn't explain the whole part about trying to grow a user base, get data that you would like try to harden like our business by getting data that isn't just publicly available, and then at the same time growing like trust in the community so that uh, you know we have that kind of social um, level of like that, basically another barrier to entry for other competitors. We have that like trust from the community, because like even the fans are like inputting in their data, and like about who they're following and stuff like that, and like basically um, creating trust. So I want to hear from you as a VC how we could probably refine that pitch, or are we actually doing too much? Um, because I think it's kind of one like logical flow stream of data. Like we build the data and then we make tools to like a value from that data. So I'm just curious to see what you think.
Yeah, so similar to the customer side of things in you, it's focus on the thing that you're the best at.
Hmm.
If you are an expert in the field and you're running good experiments and you're getting good data and these are the decisions you're making, um, a an investor or um, a VC should never be your source for information on what you should do with your product or service. The only source for that is your customer. And so in having those conversations, they're just disagreeing on with you on some sort of disconnect based on their experience versus your experience. And that's what you have to understand for yourself is their experience more valuable than mine? And in some cases it may be. I mean, here you had a very, valid source, having been a co-founder of Twitch, understands streaming, but still only has that perspective, right? Only has a limited perspective, whatever that is. Um, but your challenge is that there's a disconnect. On the other side of it, you're also looking at things backwards a little bit. You've built this tool, so you have a hammer, and the analogy with that is when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you're like, okay, I have this hammer. It's a great hammer. I believe in it. I love it. How can I monetize it? And so you're just out there smacking nails because you want to find a way to make this tool be valuable. Why is this tool the best solution to the problem? How do you know that? How can you prove it? Once you can go out and prove that, then that value and worth becomes more um, prevalent, and you understand that the value we're providing is X. It is worth Y to some customer. That is our revenue model. To just say we're going to do advertising, or to say we're going to do recruiting, or to say you got to be able to show that this is the absolute best way to solve that problem, not just a way. And that's the part we get caught in a lot. It's like, well, this could be a way, we'll
Right.
try it. It's like, well, that's not good enough. I need to know that you're making decisions based off of being the best way. Because if you're not, someone else is out there doing that. And those college recruiters, if they're your actual customer, they're only going to pick one, maybe two tools to do this, um, unless they're just paying per lead. And if you're not the best solution, then somebody else is going to be sending them more better leads. So
Gotcha.
that's really the disconnect. It's not specifically in what you're doing. It's in the belief and value that what you're doing is the best at solving the problem. And so when someone says you're doing too many things, it's not clear to me what you're the best at and what problem you're solving. And so
Mm,
if what you're the best at isn't directly related to the problem you say you're solving, then that can be very challenging for an investor to kind of wrap their arms around.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah. One of the tips my old CEO gave me when it comes to talking to VCs is like you got to hammer like creativity into their heads because they're not creative at all. Like VCs are like the least creative people in the world. But I think you actually made more sense out of that statement. It's like not really creativity. It's more like it's showing the creativity of like why this is the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The thing I like to see is just prove it, and I think that works in a lot of scenarios, even within uh, a company. You know, you get this feedback from a customer. Here's the list of 10 features that we want to implement, and this is the one that I think we should implement first. Great. Prove why that's the most important feature for us to implement. And if, well, this person said it and I think it would be cool is the best case you can build for it, then that's not a very strong case for using that feature. If it can be tied back to a, you know, core strategy within the company and solving a problem in an innovative way that's much better than what's out there already, then you start working your way towards that. And it's just so easy to get caught up in, okay, the customer said that they prefer an orange button, so we need to change all of our buttons to orange. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you know, why the customers don't have expertise in buttons. I mean, yes, there's a problem because they missed the blue button you had and they don't know how to use it, but just changing to the orange, you know, isn't necessarily going to solve it either if they didn't even know to look for it or whatever, you know, whatever crazy case that may be. Um, I did get a note out of chat here when talking about the value and the worth, an opportunity to help someone prove that it's valuable to you. One way that you can test that is just sending out an email to your list about a new release coming out, and then allow them to put up a small amount of money for early access. You know, is that feature important enough to them that they would even send you $1?
Right.
And if it's not, what does that say about the feature? And
Yeah.
sometimes it may mean something and sometimes it may not, but at least give them an opportunity to actually execute on an action of some sort so that you can then measure the difference between just what someone's saying versus something they're willing to act on. And you've already got some of that, right? If someone downloads your app, that's an action. So that's much more valuable than just saying, "Oh yeah, I really wish I had this, you know, app that would create a player profile for me." Um, you know, next up on that would be your active users. However you define an active user, those are true actions, right? I'm coming back to the app and I'm interacting with it. But if if you're not seeing consistency in that or the numbers aren't moving in the right direction, then those are all proof points that something is still a little off. And without that foundation, then the monetization side of it gets much more complicated too, because no matter what formula you run, without without that those active users, then you're not going to have much of anything for anyone to buy into.
Right.
Yep. All right, where are we at? Yeah, we're right up at it. All right. Well, Alex, I appreciate you coming on and joining me. I think we had a great conversation. Hopefully, you got a little bit out of it as well. We'll be getting this posted over to YouTube and keep it up on Twitch for as long as they will allow us, and I'll get those links out to you. And of course, feel free to follow up, and love to have you back on in a couple of months, kind of see where the conversation goes from there, what you've been able to do, experiments that you've run, things you've learned, and see how far along the applications come.
Cool. And I want to thank you again, Andy, for having me on. I really like what you're doing, kind of bring more like business focus to like the esports side. I feel like that's one thing that's kind of missing in terms of like, you know, communication is like, yes, there's a lot of money in esports, but like we also want to like use that to build cool stuff. So, or like stuff that actually like improves the scene, um, brings value, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I really appreciate you like kind of, you know, taking the time with like some of these like upstart startups to kind of you know air that out and also like see what everyone's doing. So
Yeah. Fantastic. I appreciate that as well. Have a yeah. Hopefully it. In any of these, I like to help more than I cause harm, and so if that has happened, then it's been a successful outing. And then it's always interesting to see uh, what the follow-up is from here and what we can accomplish after this. So please do keep us informed on how things are going.
Absolutely, we'll do.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks, Andy.
All right, thank you. All right, so that's going to do it for today's stream. Thanks for tuning in. As I said, I'll get this up on YouTube for the archive so that can be shared. And then be sure to come and check us out next week. I've got another, I think, a team coming on to do another strategy session or a pitch deck review. We're still trying to finalize the topic on that one, but we'll see you same time next week. Thanks.